When Robert Downey Jr. steps onto the set of Voices in Debate, the audience braces for another deep, thoughtful conversation. But James Holloway isn't here for thoughtful dialogue. He's here for confrontation. Known for breaking his guests down with sharp provocations, Holloway sees Downey's silver cross necklace as an opportunity, a symbol to dissect, a belief to challenge. Yet as Downey settles into his seat, something shifts. The power dynamic feels uncertain. Holloway leans in, ready to strike. But what he doesn't know is that by the end of this interview, it won't be Downey struggling for words. It will be him, and the world will be watching. When Robert Downey Jr. appeared on the popular talk show Voices in Debate, the audience was filled with anticipation. The show had built its reputation on confrontational interviews where guests were often pushed to their limits. The host, James Holloway, was particularly known for his ability to break down his guests with sharp questions and provocations that left many stumbling for words. When Holloway saw Downey's silver cross necklace glinting under the studio lights, he immediately identified it as his target for the evening, a symbol he could use to challenge Downey's beliefs and potentially create a viral moment. The studio was immaculately designed with sleek, modern furniture, bright lights illuminating the stage, and LED panels that shifted between shades of blue and gold. These colors had become synonymous with the show's sophisticated but aggressive identity. Holloway stood at the center of the stage, tall and imposing with carefully styled silver hair and piercing eyes that seemed to look through people rather than at them. He adjusted his tie confidently as the show's opening theme played through the speakers, and the audience erupted in enthusiastic applause. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of Voices in Debate," Holloway announced with practiced charisma. "The show where we explore truths, deconstruct narratives, and put great minds to the test." The audience responded energetically, knowing they were about to witness another intellectual sparring match. Holloway let the suspense build before introducing his guest, describing Downey as one of the most recognizable faces in Hollywood, a legendary actor known for his remarkable comeback story and quick wit, yet someone who has evolved tremendously over the years. When Robert Downey Jr. emerged from behind the dark curtain, the audience rose to their feet. He was dressed in a stylish burgundy suit with tinted glasses, his characteristic confidence evident in his stride, and the silver cross necklace standing out against his patterned shirt. He acknowledged the audience with his signature charismatic grin and took his seat across from Holloway, leaning forward slightly with an engaged intensity that was distinctly Downey. After some initial pleasantries, Holloway's gaze deliberately focused on the cross hanging around Downey's neck. "You've had quite the journey in life," he noted, "but I don't recall you being particularly vocal about religion. Yet here you are wearing a very visible Christian symbol." Downey's expression remained composed, though his eyes narrowed slightly, a subtle shift that did not escape Holloway's attention. When the show returned from its first commercial break, Holloway wasted no time resuming his attack. "Before the break, I asked you a simple question, Robert. What does that necklace mean to you?" The studio fell silent as all eyes turned to Downey, who glanced down at his necklace before responding that it had personal meaning to him. Holloway scoffed at this answer, calling it evasive. "Oh, come on, Robert," he said mockingly. "You're a public figure. Everything you wear, everything you display, sends a message." Holloway then shifted to a more aggressive stance, calling the cross an archaic symbol and expressing surprise that someone as modern, progressive, and intelligent as Downey would cling to something so outdated. He implied that faith was only for the uneducated or simple-minded, suggesting that someone with Downey's experiences should know better. His words were designed to provoke, to make Downey defensive or angry, reactions Holloway was skilled at extracting from his guests. But Downey did not react as expected. Instead of becoming defensive, he leaned back slightly, a hint of amusement playing at the corners of his mouth. "Interesting perspective, James," he said, his voice carrying that distinctive Downey cadence. "You talk as if faith and intelligence are mutually exclusive? That's a pretty reductive take for someone who claims to value nuance, don't you think?" This response, delivered with Downey's characteristic blend of charm and intensity, subtly challenged Holloway's premise and shifted the dynamic of the conversation. Downey went on to explain that while religion had been misused throughout history, that didn't erase the fact that for millions of people, it had been a source of comfort and guidance. "I wear this," he said, touching the cross, "not as some grand statement or because I'm trying to convert the masses. I wear it as a reminder of humility, of second chances, of the fact that there might be more to this life than what we can measure or quantify." Then, in a move that completely changed the power dynamic of the interview, Downey leaned forward, his gaze intense. "What about you, James? Do you believe in anything greater than yourself? Or is skepticism the only altar you worship at?" Holloway, visibly uncomfortable with this question, tried to deflect by saying they weren't there to talk about him. Downey gave a knowing smile that reached his eyes. "Maybe we should be," he replied, "because in my experience, when someone reacts with such hostility toward a symbol, it usually means there's something about it that gets under their skin. Makes you wonder why, doesn't it?" For the first time that night, James Holloway was on the defensive, and the audience could sense his discomfort. Attempting to regain control, Holloway challenged Downey about people who had suffered under religious persecution, asking if he understood the weight the cross carried. Downey nodded, his expression growing serious. "If one person uses a hammer to build a home, and another person uses the same hammer to break windows, is it the hammer's fault or the person holding it?" He went on to compare faith to fire, saying it could either warm a home or burn it down, depending on how people used it. "You're blaming the tool for how people have misused it, and that's just lazy thinking, James." When Holloway suggested that Downey was promoting religion by wearing the cross, Downey asked with pointed precision if wearing a rainbow flag would also be considered promotion. Holloway claimed that was different because a rainbow flag represented inclusivity and equality. Downey's response was quick and incisive. "And you don't think faith can represent those things? That's a pretty narrow view of something that's given billions of people purpose and hope." This question further exposed the inconsistency in Holloway's arguments. As the interview progressed, Holloway asked if Downey really believed people still needed faith in the modern world. Without hesitation, Downey said yes, his tone carrying absolute conviction. "Look around, James. We live in an age of incredible technology, unprecedented access to information, and yet people are lonelier than ever, more anxious, more searching. Logic alone doesn't fill the human soul. The answers we've found don't replace the meaning we seek." Downey acknowledged that religion had caused harm, but emphasized that we shouldn't ignore the love, hope, and kindness that had also come from genuine faith. "Pain isn't exclusive to faith, James. Humans are flawed. We make mistakes. We correct course. But if we only focus on what was done wrong, we miss everything that was done right." By the end of the interview, Holloway was visibly struggling to maintain his composure. The audience, sensing the shift in power, gave Downey a standing ovation, an unprecedented reaction for the show. Holloway forced a thin smile and admitted he hadn't expected the conversation to go in this direction. Downey replied with a genuine smile, "Conversations have a way of revealing more than we plan, James. That's what makes them interesting." Within minutes of the episode airing, clips from the conversation flooded social media. Downey's name dominated trending lists, with hashtags like "Not sure Downey wins" spreading across platforms. News outlets, talk shows, and commentators analyzed every moment of the debate, many calling it the night Holloway met his match, or the most important conversation of the year. James Holloway sat alone in his dressing room, scrolling through the reactions and realizing that his usual tactics had failed spectacularly. For the first time in his career, he had not controlled the conversation, and everyone had witnessed it. His sharp provocations, calculated condescension, and attempts to corner his guest had all been met with thoughtful responses, delivered with Downey's characteristic wit and intensity. In contrast to Holloway's distress, Downey left the studio with his typical flair, giving a few quick waves to the crew and a thumbs up to waiting fans. When reporters swarmed him outside with microphones and questions, he simply smiled and said, "I think we covered everything pretty thoroughly in there, don't you?" Days later, he finally addressed the interview with a single social media post. "We don't have to agree to respect each other. We don't have to believe the same things to walk the same path. Be kind anyway." The message resonated deeply with people because it wasn't about winning an argument or proving a point. It was about understanding and respect. values that transcended the divisive nature of the debate itself. In the end, Downey had won not by defeating Holloway in verbal combat, but by demonstrating a more profound kind of wisdom, the ability to stand firm in his beliefs while remaining open to the humanity of others, even those who challenged him. It was a reminder of why Downey, with all his complexities and contradictions, remained one of Hollywood's most beloved figures. Days later, Downey finally broke his silence with a single post on social media. No long statements, no explanations, just a simple message. We don't have to agree to respect each other. We don't have to believe the same things to walk the same path. The post exploded across platforms. It wasn't about religion. It wasn't about winning. It was about understanding. And that was why Downey had won. Because in the end, it wasn't about the argument. It was about the conversation. If you enjoyed this story, we have many more that will warm your heart. Click the screen to explore more stories of hope, compassion, and resilience.